Hello there, and welcome back to Steam It with Steve. Today we're going to go through an amazing program called Sketchup for Homes. Now this is a 3D CAD program that will allow you to draw whatever you want. So if you wanted to build your dream house, you can do it in this. If you wanted to redesign the inside of your bedroom and make it look really cool, you can do it like this. If you wanted to 3D print a fidget spinner, so you wanted to custom build it and then go off and actually design and print it, you can do it in this. So it's an amazing program that lets you design anything, and then it also gives you the potential to maybe build it in the real world as well. So it helps you model it all the way out. So before we begin, we're just going to talk about what we're going to cover today. So the plan for today is we're going to learn how to log into SketchUp for schools, then going to learn how to create a new metric file. The XYZ axis is what we're going to cover. So we're going to learn how do we actually move left, right, up and down in this virtual interface. We're going to see how all the different tools work, how to move around inside this XYZ space, the project tools that are available for you. So these are more of the system files and how they're going to look. The shortcut key bindings. So how do you, instead of having to physically go across and type and then click on the tools, you can use the keyboard and type in the different options for you. We're then going to build our own box. So we're going to learn how to build the box. We're going to learn how to group the box, how to tag the box, which allows us to then hide the box if we're building other boxes, which will make more sense later. We're then going to learn how to translate, then how to move the box up and down, how to rotate the box, and then how to scale the box or change the size of the box. After that, we'll then do a brief tool overview. So we'll look at all the different options that you do have in SketchUp because it's pretty powerful, particularly for being a free online program. Cool, so let's begin. So if we go to www.google.com, you should all find something that looks like this. Okay, so google.com, you've logged in, you've got your Google account all signed in. Up in the top right, you'll find these 9 dots. If you click on that, up will come up all the different apps that are part of the Google environment. If you then scroll right down the bottom, so if we use our mouse wheel or we move all the way down the bottom, you'll find SketchUp for schools. Okay, that's as simple as is to find it. So we click on that. Okay, if you don't have access to that, you can just type in edu.sketchup.com as well. That's another way of getting there. Now, because it's part of the Google network, you just literally sign in with Google. Okay, now I'm just going to hide my windows so you guys can't see my email account. Nothing personal. So we go down here, I'll click on that, type in your password, which you might need to do sometimes, and then it literally logs you in. Now, because you've logged in with your Google account, all of your files as you build them literally will be saved on here, okay, which is really cool. So if your computer dies or crashes for some unknown reason, it's saved based on Google, which you can see some of the examples I've already done from playing around today. Cool, so this is your project window. So you have all the files that you've built so far. You can open from devices, you can create new, and then you have your Google Drive. If you click on create new, which is sort of the instant reaction that you would do if you're trying to build something from start, that's okay for our American friends, but it's not okay for our metric friends. Okay, so if we're using the metric system, we actually have to go across here to the down arrow. And if we click on that, what you'll see is all these other options. Our houses here in Australia usually are built with millimeters. So we're going to use the millimeter system for all our designs. So we're going to go down here to decimal and then millimeters and click. Now, if we do that, what's going to happen is we're going to get our 3D space. So this is literally our 3D world that we can play around with and build things in SketchUp. To start, we need to understand what the X, Y, and Z axis means. So X, Y, Z is just the pathways that things can move along, so it's all referenced, right? So if we're building a solid object here, and then we're building another solid object, so I'm not a car, then a handbag, and we want to make sure that they're relative to each other, we need to have some sort of grid system that allows us to work inside of that. And this is what an XYZ axis does. So X-axis is your horizontal movement, which is done along the red axis. The Y-axis then is the depth, or how far back and forward you go, which is the green axis. And then the Z-axis is your up and down. So that's how far up or down you go in this 3D world, okay? And then they always put a little person there so that you've got someone to work out relative to. Now, to save your file, we're going to start that off because that's super important whenever we begin. It's as simple going up here to the untitled box, clicking on it, and then you save it. Okay, so I'm going to save it inside my Year 9 IST file, and then I just literally type in example of cool stuff. Okay, and then that will save my SKP file there, which is the SketchUp file, like Microsoft Word, how they do docx. And there we go, it's all saved. So as I build it, I would just check in and make sure that it's saving as we're going. So see how it's got the little saved box? And then every time we change, we just check up there to see that it's been saved. Cool. So what do we want to do? We want to learn how to move around the world now. Okay. So when we move around, down the bottom left is basically the core options for moving. So if we click on that, up will come up the different options. We're pretty much worried about these first three. So the orbit, the pan tool or the hand tool, and then the zoom tool. So the orbit tool, if we click on that guy, literally allows you to orbit around a set position. So wherever you start the mouse, so say I start on Catherine or the lady here, it will rotate around her. If I go up here and rotate, it will then rotate around that point. So wherever you click on the screen is kind of important. The other part with that, which is really handy, is that you have this option. So you have all the different tools in here. So basically what they have is key bindings for each of the tools. Now, most of the popular ones have a letter that's attached to it, and pretty much whatever the tool name is, it's the first letter of it. So the orbit tool is the O tool. The circle tool is the C, the rectangle is the R. There's just a few little quirky ones, like the pan tool is the H, but I just remember that because it's the hand tool, for example. Okay, so there's this reference card here, which I'll put below in the links. So instead, so if I want to use the selection tool, I can either click on it there, or I can press the space key and it will automatically change to that. If I want to change the orbit key, instead of going over here and clicking on it, I can press the O and then it automatically changes to orbit. You can also right click and go to the different tools that way. So if I want to go to pan, I can click on that. If I go orbit, go for there. So if we go down here and go to the pan tool, or I can press H for hand, or I can right click here and go pan. That allows me to move the screen left and right. Pretty cool, right? The next one then is the zoom out. So zooming out, you click on this one, and then it's just literally zoom up to go in, and then out to move away from an object. I would highly recommend investing in one of these. Okay, so you can use your trackpad to zoom in by doing 2-finger swipes out and in to zoom in and out. But a lot easier with this is I just literally click on the screen, and as long as it's selected, and don't even need to have that particular tool. So say I've got the selection tool. If I'm use up and down, it scrolls in and out. If I want to use the orbit tool, I just literally click on it, and I can't move it there, but it then rotates around. So I just literally use the orbit tool by using that mouse button there. Pretty cool, right? Awesome. So those are the basics of how you move around. I would recommend a mouse just because it's easier when you're doing more complex work, that you can do things like this instead of having to go across what's the tool then coming back. The other option is using just the right click once that option menu is selected, and then it gives you those different choices there as well. Okay. So next step. Oh, also, if you ever get lost, so say you've zoomed in all the way over here and then you want to get back, if you just press the Shift and Z key, it will always bring you back to the origin or the center of your project file, okay, which is super useful, particularly for later down the track. So I'm just going to use the hand tool, which is over here, and move across so that we're centered. So let's build a box now. Now, when you build a box, basically you click on the rectangle tool, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down. So the 6th one down, we click on the rectangle tool, and it's the first option here. If I click on that, what you'll see is there's a little blue rectangle with a pencil. If I click anywhere on the screen and then just move up, automatically it draws our rectangle. So if I click there, I now have a whole rectangle. Pretty cool, right? So that's now drawn. Now, we're going to be a bit more precise when we draw our things, so we're just going to delete that dodgy rectangle I built. So we're going to go up here to the select tool or press space, and then we're going to select everything like that. So now we can see that it's all selected because it's got the blue outline and then the blue dots, and I'm going to press the delete key, so that now doesn't exist. We're going to go then back to the rectangle tool, or we can press R. We're going to click in the center here, And we're going to make a box that's 1,000 by 1,000 millimeters. Now, if you look down here, see how there was the dimensions? So what I'm going to do is I just clicked the original one and see how I can move it around and it's changing. Instead of moving the mouse, so you got to make sure it's not changing at all. I then type in without going down to this box. So see how the mouse is still up here? I type in 100, comma 1000. So that means that I've made a box that's a meter by a meter. So just a flat rectangle that has that. I then press enter. So I don't press click, I press enter, and that builds my box. Now you're probably looking at that going, what the, that's not the size that you said it was going to be. That's not right. It actually is, okay? And this is what perspective means. So if we orbit back around that, see how when we get closer to it, it actually is the right dimensions. It just didn't look like it from how far out we were. Okay, pretty cool, right? So then the next part we're going to learn about is how to extrude or pull that shape out. So we're going to have a two-dimensional shape, and then we're going to extrude or pull out that to give it some volume. Because at the moment, that is infinitely small. It has no dimension for its height. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use the extrusion tool or the push-pull tool, which is this guy here. And this allows us to pull out the shape. Okay, so you can either click on that or you can press P. All right, so if we click on this guy and it's the top one, we click on the push-pull tool and then we hover over the top here. Now, do you see how the face now has those little blue dots? That means that's the face that's going to be pulled out. So if I now click on that and drag it up, see how it's now changed it? Yeah, pretty cool. And then down the bottom there, you should see how it's changing its size as we're moving this up and down. So because we want to make this a perfect box, I'm not moving the mouse down here. See how the mouse is still at the top here as I move it up? So we're going to use down here just by typing it straight away in. So we're going to type in 1000. Whoop, that didn't work. There we go. So we'll go there, select it, 100, enter. Whoop. I'll get there. Cool. Sorry, my mouse is pretty sensitive, so it's moving as we're going. Awesome. So we now have our rectangle. So if we use the select tool or we press space, we can now select the different faces inside this. We can then select the different corners. Right, there's a whole heap of different things that we can do inside of this. Now, if we try and move this object, it will only move the faces because they're not all grouped. Right, so rather than having to go here and pressing the select tool, then selecting the whole thing and then moving it, what we can do is we can actually group it. And it's really, really simple. All you got to do is press the select tool or space. Then we select everything. Right, so everything's now selected. And it's as simple then as clicking right click and then coming down here to make a group. So now that object has been grouped together, we can now move that around. Pretty cool. The other thing that we want to know is then how to tag this object. So say we're building a lot of things. We want to make sure, say we're building a house, we want to make the wall invisible temporarily so we can see through it. By using the tagging trick, we can basically do that. So if we go down here on our projects tools, and it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, or the little tag down here, and see how it changed to tags, or it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the bottom. And we click on that guy. And what's going to happen is you're going to have your tags. Now I'm just going to move this to the right so that you can see the box. Okay. And with the tags, you have these different options. You can hide it. You can add tags. You can create a folder to put the tags in. You can save the filters, and then you can change the colors of the objects by the different tags. So we're going to create a new tag here. So we're going to click on this guy and up comes a name. I'm going to call this name the box tag and then press enter or click on OK. Now, if I click on that eye, it's not actually going to hide the box yet. And you might be thinking, why is that? Well, it's because we haven't actually tagged it yet. So this is the same as if we've physically cut out a tag on a sheet of paper and then written on it box, right? And we're about to label the tag. To do that, we need to click on the tag here, right? So this has been selected and see how it's changed to blue. And then when we move over to objects in the virtual world, see how it's now got this little tag up here? I don't know if I can move it. Yeah, there we go. So see this little tag here? It's got this little dog tag looking thing. If I come across here now and click on it, it's then going to apply box to this solid shape. So if I click on that, that's now been tagged. So now the really cool part, if I click on the eye, I can make my box temporarily invisible. How awesome is that? Okay, now this is really useful when we're building more complex shapes because we want to hide them. So particularly when we're drawing walls and doing redoing kitchens and inside of it, by using that allows us to hide the wall. Pretty cool. Okay, the next couple of tools that we got to do is actually then how do we move this box around? Okay, so what we have, so we understand how to move around on the screen, but we don't know how to move the object. So the orbit tool, or pressing the O key, allows us to rotate around. We can then press the hand tool, right? So H for pan or hand, which is the hand of God, which lets you move. And then you've got the zoom tool, which allows you to scale in and out. Okay. We want to be able to do that with objects as well. So say we want, I'll zoom back in so we can see Catherine there, right? So there's the box relative to the lady at the front there. So if we click on this guy and click on the move tool, because this is now all grouped, we can then click on it once and then move it. Right, so that box will now move. Now, if you've picked, some of the smarter kids might have picked up, as I move it, see how if I move that around, it changes green, that line, then it changed red, and then if I went straight up, it changed blue. That basically means that it's going along those fixed axes. Also, you might notice in the bottom right-hand corner here, that the distance is there. So you can physically move the box around and then just click it. Or if we press Control Z, you can then click, move it in the direction that you would like it to move, and then type in exact measurements. So 2000 and then press enter. Whoop, sorry, my mouse is super sensitive. Gamer mouse. Cool. So then that allows you to move the box around wherever you want. You can also move it up. So then that's on a different plane. So see how that's above the lady now? Okay, which is the blue axis. Okay. The other thing that's really useful with the control tool, if you look down, the move tool, if you press control, it says cycle, copy, stamp, or move. So if we click on that, right, and move it over here, and I just press the control key once, what happens then is I can then create copies without having to redraw everything. How cool is that? Okay. The next one then is the rotate tool. So if I go along here and then I have the rotate tool, if I click on rotate, what happens is it comes up with a little protractor, and the color of the protractor is what is it perpendicular, which axis is it perpendicular to. So in this case, currently this would rotate around the Z axis. So it would go that way around it. Okay. If we put it on this face here, it would go green, which means then it's going to rotate around the Y axis. Like so. So then it's going to be there and it's going to rotate around that way. If we then put it on this face, see how it changed red, which then means that it's going to go across the X axis like that. So it's going to rotate that way around. Now the way to rotate is super easy. There's 2 points that you need to put in. So you need to put in the fixed point that it's going to rotate around, and then where is the pivot point going to go to? So you'll click once to go to the center of this, where the rotation is going to occur, and then you click again to say what, in a straight line, what does it need to rotate around, and which way is it going? So it's going to go this way or this way around. So let's say we want to rotate this box around this corner here. Right, so if I click on that corner, and then let's click on this other corner. Now as I rotate that box, see how it's moving around that first point that I clicked? Okay, pretty cool, right? So then you can also do it on the top. So you might want to do it from here on the face into the corner. So now that box rotates around that way. Okay, you can then also physically say what direction that you want it to move. So sometimes people will use the midpoint and then a corner. So that's kind of useful sometimes. Yeah. Or if we want to go from the top, let's go from there to there. So now that rotates around that way. You can then also manually type in. So if we only wanted to rotate 60 degrees, we type in 60, then press enter, and then that would rotate around like that. Cool. The last one that we can then do is scaling, right? So scaling is a little bit different. Instead of rotate, we come down here to the scale tool. And if we click on that and then click on this guy, what will happen is you'll see this, all these dots. There'll be 27 little dots inside this rectangle. They're basically all the different vertices that you can manipulate. So if I click on the center one here and move up, it will only move up and down in the Z axis. It won't change the other ones. If I clicked on this one, I then get a little bit more options. Okay, so I can either move it this way or I can go up. All right. If I click on the corner, I get full control. So I can move it up and down in that way. And it's literally going to keep it in balance compared to that other coordinate there. So see how it keeps it all in proportions? So that might be useful. If you move it there, and then if you press the shift key, it gets rid of the options for proportionality. So you can literally move around, change the scale, and it just goes all over the place. So if you want to make it super thin, you can do so and then drag it out. There's options there that you can do. If you press the control key, that will force it to be around the center. That's another thing that might be useful. So you see how it's actually moved it up and then it's kept it level on the ground as we move it around. Whereas if we don't do that, it will actually go into the ground. Okay, so that might be a trick later down the track for you. Cool, so we've now learned how to rotate an object, translate the object, and then also scale the object. So, and then what you should see down here, save all the changes. We click on that. It's now saved everything because we've built as we've gone. So that's automatically done up onto Google. So I just want to briefly talk about these tools. That's pretty much it that I wanted to show in terms of everything. But here's some of the ideas of the tools that you can use in this menu over here. So I'm just going to play around with these, and you can have a play around with me as well as we go. So the cool part, we'll start from the top. We got the select tool. If you press space, it brings that guy. This just allows us to select the different objects. So that won't let us move it. We need to go down here eventually, but that's for the selection. You then have the lasso tool. So if you click on that, come down to the second option with the lasso. That lets you sort of select objects in an area. So if you can't get exactly what it is, it lets you select around it rather than having to use a straight box. The eraser tool is super useful. So if you want to get rid of things, you can't just go here and click on it. To erase something, you actually have to go through it like an eraser. So if I want to get rid of this box that we've built and scaled and rotated, I click up the top here, go all the way through to the other side and let go. Okay, so I've just pressed the click down to show you again, I've clicked, held it, held it, held it, held it, released. Okay, and then it's gone rid of that object. The paint bucket tool is really cool. What happens is it allows you to color the different objects. Okay, so they come up with standard options here. You can then search for different options that you want. So if you want to make a brick pattern onto your box, you can do that like this. So you click on the brick, come across to the box, and then see how there's the little circle inside of the paint as it's falling out. Whatever face that's currently on, if you click on it, it will then make it that pattern. Pretty cool, right? You can then also, there's other colors inside of here. So if you want pink, green, yellow, you can change it like that. There's also glass, which is really cool. If you want to make sure it looks like glass, you can click on that, and then it's made it into a glass texture. If you want to make it transparent, you'll see these shapes in the material. So see how it's got a diagonal through it? That actually means that it's transparent. So if we want to make it, it looks like this is going to be water. That cube now has that transparency inside of it, so you can see through it and see shapes. If we wanted just straight glass, you could click on that one, and then it gives you inside the box, but with like a grey tinge. The other thing that's really cool with this, if you've applied a material and say we've clicked on this one, you clicked on the object. Where was it? There. So if we clicked on the home, clicked on the object and clicked on it, up here you can actually change the material, so you can edit the material. So if we go edit, and let's say we want to make some gold, and I've downloaded this texture online. So this is what it looks like. So it's just the same pattern over and over. But now I can actually go here down to the upload. So choose image for texture. I click on the gold that I've downloaded, upload it, and then use image. So now my box has gold all over it. Pretty cool, right? And then what's cool with this is you can change it. Right, and then you can play around with that until it looks a little bit more the way that you want it. Cool, so you can actually add different materials. You can take pictures of people's faces. There's a whole heap of stuff that you can play around with this, which is really, really, really cool. And it makes the box look a lot more professional. So that's materials. And then you see that you can also access the different materials here, but then this is the paint bucket tool that you use to apply that. Cool. The next thing we're going to do is the pen tool. So the pen tool works pretty simple. If you click on the line, you can then draw different shapes. So there's a triangle. And then if I want to extrude that triangle, I can click on the face. And then now I have a little triangle prism. You can then also free draw. So if I wanted to draw some sort of two-dimensional shape, right, I can do that with this. And then if I want to extrude that, I can also do that. Okay, for whatever reason. If I want to extrude that out, this is where it gets a little bit funky. So you can do some cool stuff with that. So that's a free tool. There's the arc tool to show this second one because this is kind of cool. So you can draw an arc like so, and then you can play around with all the different measurements of how big the arc actually wants to be. Yeah, so if it's 200 by 200 and so on. So there's some arc stuff in there that you can do. The rectangle tool we've seen before. The other ones that are important here is you've got the circle tool, so you can draw a circle. You can then also draw a polygon. So there's the polygon tool, which is this one down here, the fourth option. You can then change the size of how many polygons you want to deal with. So if I select the tool first, see how it's got the sides down the bottom right here, so just under here. So instead of it being six-sided, I want to do an octagon, so I can press 8. That then builds an octagon, and then you can change how big you want it to be. So if you want the radius to be 500, there we go. Cool. The next thing then you have the extrusion tool. Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that didn't work. Let's just go back to it. There we go. Sorry, I didn't press enter properly. Then you got the extrusion tool, which we've done before, so you can bring up the shapes. Like so. Let's undo that. You then have the follow me tool. So if you draw a two-dimensional shape, let's see if we can do it with the octagon up here. So say we've got this two-dimensional shape. If I draw a path behind it, like that. With the follow me, basically we click on the face. It's not quite working, but basically you can, if you click on a face with it, it should work. This is always a tricky one. We want it to go blue. Cool. So I'll just do that and see if we can get it working. So we click on the face, and then as you can see, it literally follows the line however high that you want it to go. Okay, and then what happens then is you can draw more complex shapes. So say I want it to then go to the right, and then across here, and then down. You can then go the follow me, click on the face, click on the follow me, click on the face, and then it will follow around with that. Move it across so you can see it all. And see how we can rotate it through. And now we've got like a pipe thing that's happened, that's copied that shape all the way around. So that's a little bit more complex. You can do some really cool artwork with that. Then have the union tool. I won't go into that too much detail, but basically if you have solid groups, you can then group the groups. So that allows you to union the groups. You can also minus the groups. So if you want to cut into the shape, you can use this option. And then we have all the ones that we've just done. So you have the move tool, which we've done before, the rotate, and then the scale. Then you have all the different measurement tools. So if we want to work out how far a particular shape, because we just freehand drew it, or we've forgotten, we can use the tape measure tool. And what happens with this is we click on the object and then how far across, and see how that gives us the measurement on the screen. This is useful for when we're trying to work out after the fact how far we drew something, or if we're drawing particular shapes and we want it to go particular distances, we'll be using this tool. So then we know that that's 808 when we're building it. You can then also use the dimension tool. Now this is really useful, particularly if we're drawing house plans. So if we click on that and then we click on that, we can drag it out. And then along the x-axis, we have literally the measurement displayed on the outside, okay? And then something just so that you've seen it, you can then select it, I'm pretty sure. Yep, so we select that. And then we can say sidewall or something like that. Okay, and then it will show that there. You can then also come up here and then tag it, which is super useful. So if we go here, tag, and we write the dimensions, and we click on that and put that in as a tag, and then we can hide it. Right, so we can have all the dimensions on our shapes and then hide it so that later down the track, if we want to show it off, we can do that. We then have the move tool, the walk tool, which basically means that you click on this area on the screen and then wherever you move the mouse to as you're holding it down, it will move to. So that's useful if you're trying to work around an area and trying to see all the different stuff. You then have a perspective tool. So if you click on that and then I click there, it will move me down to that position and then I can move around with my eye vision, which is the last tool down there. And then you have your rotate tools and all the stuff that we saw before. Up the top left, I'm just going to go through these real quickly. So I'm going to close these down as we go so that we don't get confused. So up the top here, if we select an object, right, so I've selected that cube. If I go there, we're going to use the hand tool and move back down. So if I select the tool, so pressing space or clicking on that, and then use the property inspector, I can see all that. And then I can see what tag is involved with it. I can then also hide it, lock it so it doesn't change, and then don't receive the shadows so it doesn't receive all those different things when we get there. It then tells you also the volume of it and then gives you the material on it as well. So you get all this ideas of what happens with this particular shape. So we just close that one down. You can then click on this one, which then gives you the outline. So if I click on different shapes, I can change the way that we see them. And these are all the different groups that are available currently. So I can literally hide and show them as we go. So this is like the main outliner, which is kind of useful. We close that one down. If I get stuck, I can then click on all these different tools and it gives me all the different modifiers and what they do. So if I click on the paint bucket tool, and then back here, it shows me what to do with the paint bucket. If I click on the pen tool, it then shows me how to use the line tool and all the different things. So if you ever get stuck with the different tools, the little university cap guy is a big help. So we'll just close that down. We then have the components. So say we want to upload an Xbox. Rather than you having to draw it, this is super useful. You can go and find other people's Xboxes, and it's as simple as searching for it, clicking on it. It downloads the model, and then you can place it on the screen. So now we should have the Xbox there. Oh, it's a full room, it looks like. Let's have a look. That's cool. We'll use the hand tool. There we go. So someone's built a full Xbox room. They've even done like the Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and the controllers. Okay, so some people, there might be a particular component in there that you want. I'm just going to delete that. My hint to you when you're building this is to try and find the smallest files possible. So anything under a megabyte is good, just because you need to have the space when you're building this. So now, for some reason, it's gone way up there. Let's zoom back in on the ground. So let's go again. And then if I move that, I now have a real basic Xbox. Okay, so you can move that around and get it into the place that you want. So this one looks probably a bit more detailed, and it's just up to you to play around with these until you find that one that actually matches what you want it to look like. That one looks pretty cool. Cool, so you have all those different options in here under components. Now my hint when you're doing your assignments, don't just use the components because you will be marked down if you just use components. It's okay to reference some of them for really complex shapes if you can't build it yourself, but the people that build their own ones, they're the ones that are going to get rewarded. So that's there. You then have, so we've done materials before. So we've done materials, which is this one here. We went through briefly how to change all those around. So if I want to select it, click on that face and I change it to pink. And then I click on it. It's now changed that face. Now the reason why it's only changed that face is because we haven't done something. Okay, so because this is actually all individual shapes, it will only change that side of the wall. So if we want to change it all, we need to select it all, right click, then make a group. Now, if I change it to pink, it will then change the whole thing. Okay, which is what we've talked about before. So those are all the different materials. We then have the styles. So when we're doing the final photos, you might want to make it look a little bit artistic. So there's some options here that you can play around with. Okay, so you can have a look at those. Up to you how you sort of do that one. Okay, and then once you go back to the home, it will then give you the option to go between those two. Then have all the tags that we've shown before. If you ever want to add a tag, you just literally click on the tag and then click on the different objects. And then it will hide those particular things. And then you can always add new tags like we've shown before. Then you have down here the scenes. So this is the different perspectives that you can get relative to the origin. So if we want the top-down floor plan view, we can go like that, and then we can see exactly what the sky eye view is. If we want an isometric view, we can click that. If we want to go behind everything, in front, the very front, you can click on all these until you find something that matches. You can then also change around with the field of view and make your own little sort of standard version, which is kind of cool, and then add that in. And then there's different options there as well. You can then click on this guy here, which then shows all the properties or the way that this is displayed. So if you've got guidelines like the one that I drew there, you can click on that, and then it hides the guidelines. You can hide the axes because there might be a particular way that you're trying to show it. So for like your end show, and then you can do different section panes and all these different things. My hint to you is just hide them, never delete the guides because they're really useful and it shows that you've done the work down the line. You can then also put shadows in place. So in this case, it's having the sun coming across. And then you can also even get to the level of whether it's summer or winter, which changes the level that the shadows go. You can then put fog on if you want to make it look a little bit foggy. So things that are closer and then further away will have that fog element. It's up to you how you sort of want to play around with that. And then you can change the way that the color works with that. So if you want to, I don't know, make the fog more pinky, you can do that. Okay. Which is pretty cool. So there's a whole heap of different options there for the way that it's displayed. Then you can go info. So this is all the measurements. So if we did want to change it all of a sudden to feet and inches, you could do that, but we always prefer millimeters. You can then change how precise that it does it. So if we go into the nearest millimeter, that's pretty precise. You'd be pretty good with that. You can then say how it's going to snap. Angle units, this is actually quite useful. Sometimes you might want to make the angular rotation a bit less when it snaps. So you can do 1 degree, which makes it a little bit easier when it goes across in blocks. So then that gives you that level of precision there as well. The last one then, which is really cool, is basically is it going to be solid? So if you click on different objects, so if we click on this, which we just grouped, and if I click on this guy, the solid inspector, it's going to tell us, yes, it's solid. But if we click on something else like this one, see how we didn't group that when we made that cylinder? So therefore it's not solid. So then it's going to tell you to group it together. Cool. So once that's all sort of played around with, that's a real brief overview of everything that you need to know inside of SketchUp. The trick with this is the more that you play with it, the better you'll become at it. So hopefully you've learned something about SketchUp for schools. There's a lot to do in this. but it's a lot of fun as well. Okay, and my hint to you is the more that you play around with it, the better you'll become with the tools. Please, please, please use the key bindings. It makes you quicker, and also grabbing a mouse will save you hours and hours of time. So that's all for me. Thanks for coming along and watching Steam It with Steve. If you have any questions, please put in the comments below. Please like and subscribe because it does help with our YouTube algorithm. And then, yeah, see you next time on Steam with Steve. Adios.